Today you'll meet Jack and his daughter Tracy. They're going to tell you how alcohol almost destroyed their family. In a few minutes, Jack and Tracy will tell you what life was like when alcohol ruled. And then they're going to tell you how Jack triumphed over this problem.
Welcome to Hope for Life's Journey.
Hello, I'm Randy Beckton, and welcome to Hope for Life's Journey, a special presentation of the Herald of Truth Ministries. Today we're talking about a problem that touches almost every household in America. It plays a part in the majority of murders, manslaughters, assaults, child abuse, and child neglect cases on the dockets in our courts. It's a problem that can kill you, even if you have nothing to do with it personally. It causes over half the wrecks on our highways. It's the problem of addiction to alcohol. And besides the physical damage and the loss of life that it causes, there's that immeasurable emotional and spiritual pain for every family that's affected. But today's program offers hope for everyone who's struggling with this problem. Let's move now into our interview with Jack and Tracy. Thank you for being with us today. Jack, you're a businessman. You've been in the oil business for a long time. You've reared a successful family with your wife, but you're not here today to talk about your business. You're not here to talk about pleasures of the family. You're here to talk about the problem of alcohol in your family. What happened with alcohol in your family?
Randy, I began drinking when I was about 21 years old on just a social basis. And I stopped drinking when I was 26. And I stopped drinking for 14 years. And then I began to drink again. Now, don't ask me why I started drinking again, but I did. And for an additional 14 years, I drank, and it began to get worse and worse. At the end of my drinking career, the only way I could control the amount of alcohol that I drank that day was to only buy what I was going to consume that day.
So you're drinking what you were buying.
That's right. And that happened every day. My life was controlled by alcohol. I didn't know how to live with it, and I didn't know how to live without it.
How much were you drinking every day, on the average?
On the average, at least a fifth of vodka a day, and then however much wine that I had hid in the garage, you know.
Tracy, you're one of how many children?
I have two other siblings, a brother and sister.
All right, are you in the middle?
I'm the oldest.
All right, where were you when this problem tended to take a downhill slide?
By that time, I was married. We lived in the same city, and I had children, and I was not at home. My brother was still at home, but my sister was also married by that time.
Now, you knew Dad had a problem.
Yes. Daddy knew Daddy had a problem.
He would come to your house, and what would he tell you?
I've got a problem. I'm an alcoholic. I need some help. But it's not time yet.
Did you think he was going to take steps to control it?
Yes, I figured since he was telling me that he had a problem, that he would take care of it.
Well, now, how long did that go on?
4 years.
4 years.
4 years.
Well, then, Jack, what finally got your attention?
Well, I had a real classic intervention. Tracy arranged for a number of my friends to intervene with me, and she had arranged everything, including transportation to a treatment center in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. And
so you couldn't take the step on your own. One of your own children gently nudged you, gathered loved ones.
Well, I'm not so sure how gentle
How
it
gentle was it? All right.
But it was a very classic intervention. I was ready. I said before I didn't know how to live with it, and I didn't know how to live without it. I kept making promises to myself and promises to other people that, you know, I'm going to quit. This intervention led me into a treatment center in Wisconsin. And I was very, very surprised when I got there. It said Milwaukee Psychiatric Hospital, and I didn't think I was crazy. It turns out that I really was in many respects, because insanity is doing the same thing in the same way, expecting a different result, and that's what my drinking was.
Well, let's back up just a little bit. Tracy, you spearheaded what you call this intervention. Did you just gather the people together and barge in and do it, or did you prepare for it?
No, in fact, that's what I wanted to do, and that is not the way it ended up happening.
How did it happen?
We did get, as Daddy said, many of his friends and my family members together, and after several weeks of prayer, and prayer was, I believe, the most important part of what happened there, because everything happened the way it happened, and we would have absolutely had no idea that it would result that way. Then we also sought professional help so that we could have someone there with us that was not a family member. And
now, Jack, you went to Milwaukee at the request of the family, and you were interested also, but did you go up there to stop drinking, or did you go up there to do something else?
Oh, no. I thought the kind of help that a person got for alcoholism was a way to drink regularly, like regular people drink.
So you went to learn how to drink better.
That's right. That's right. I did not go up there to quit drinking.
Well, is that what you got reinforcement for up there, or did they tell you you had to change your thinking?
Well, when I got up there, it was an amazing thing. They said that I was an alcoholic, and that alcoholism was a disease, and that it was not a curable disease, that it was a disease that could be interrupted, a disease that could be put on hold, so to speak. But there were a few things that I had to do. And they gave me these books, and they started saying something about God.
Well, before you got on the plane, I was going to ask you, when you were doing this much drinking, did you feel like you were just a weak person? Did you feel like God couldn't love you because you were drinking all this much? What was your view of God?
Well, my view of God at that point was that God was really sort of like Santa Claus. You know, he's keeping a list, checking it twice, going to find out who's naughty and nice. And I was naughty.
You were naughty.
And so, as a consequence, there wasn't any hope for me. I continued to go to church, but you see, I wasn't good enough, so I withdrew from everything except going to church. And I felt lost. I felt ashamed. I couldn't control drinking.
Tracy,
I was really a bad person.
Let me ask you a question, Tracy. Did you have to deal with the stigma that people, your dad, whom you loved and respected so much, that people might think of him as a bad person because he had an alcohol abuse problem?
I really didn't care, Randy. My dad was going to die, and I'd rather have people think bad of him for being an alcoholic than have him not there. So that really was not a consideration for me at all.
But it took a lot of courage for you to take this role. You didn't want this role, did you?
No, I didn't. My mother was not able to take care of it, and my siblings weren't either at that time. So it was somewhat forced upon me. But I wanted my children to have a grandfather, which they do.
Which they do.
And so I did undertake it.
Tracy, you believe, I know Jack believes, but you believe God intervened in your dad's life.
Yes, absolutely. As I said before about the prayer, when we went in to tell him it was time to go, his heart was ready. It was time, and I believe only that the prayer and that God did that for him.
You believe God intervened, Jack?
Oh, yes. It took a lot of time, and I had to be ready.
Well, you know there's someone watching today, and it's the reason we're all here, for ourselves as well as that person, who's sitting out in a family, and they're loving someone who's in the very same position you're in. So before we go very much further, is there a nugget truth that you can tell someone who's a family member? Maybe Tracy, what would you say to someone whose mother or dad or brother or sister is in the situation right now? Is there something that you can say that's hopeful?
Well, I think so. I think that we are a result of hope, and that through the prayer and through supportive family members and getting help, that it worked.
14 million problem drinkers in families today. There's a lot of people in the situation that you're in. I've been in that situation myself. We want to turn it to you for questions, but let me just be a bit self-revealing here for a moment. I grew up in a home where there was alcohol abuse. My father drank almost every day. He was a professional worker, very skilled in his work. He would get up at 5:30 in the morning and go and work all day long without touching a drop. He'd get off about 4:30 or 5 in the afternoon and start drinking. Now, does this pattern sound familiar? He would start drinking, and by the time we would see him at 7:30 or 8, he was well on his way to being drunk. And that was the pattern all of my years in my home. And I didn't know what the pain was that my father was trying to cover up or trying to deal with by drinking so much and drinking so regularly every day until later in his life. And I'll tell you about that in just a few minutes. Would you like to ask a question? Let's get into this and see if we can help some folks. Who has a question for Jack and for Tracy? Good. Stand up, please.
Hi, Jack. I come from a family where both my parents were drug addicts, and I was just wondering, how does Christ give you the daily strength to resist the temptation of alcohol?
Well, it's an answer to prayer. I pray every morning for the strength to not drink that day. And in actual fact, that desire to drink has been taken away from me a long time ago. I thank Him for that day at night. The hope that I would offer to you as a child is that God is there for your parents too. And you need to ask Him to help them.
Very helpful. Tracy, you want to add anything to that? All right, let's go to the next question. Who would have a question? All right.
Jack, you had mentioned how your view of God was kind of like a Santa Claus. I'd like to know, looking back on your life now, how has your view of God changed, and how has that helped you spiritually?
I really thank you for asking that question, because there was a point in my life when I was up in Milwaukee that I went to a speakers meeting. There was a rabbi who was a psychiatrist giving a speech to a group of doctors. These doctors were alcoholics, recovering. He started his speech by saying that there's a disease of man that there is only one cure for, that you can give massive doses of all kinds of antibiotics and the man will die. The disease is scurvy and the cure is vitamin C. He went further to say that when God created man, He created man incomplete, and that man has something to do with his own completion, and that in trying to fill his life, he can fill it with all kinds of excesses, including alcohol, but he is still incomplete. And until a man fills his life spiritually, he is still incomplete.
There's this God-shaped vacuum inside our hearts, and He's the only one that can fill it.
That's correct.
That's right. Someone else have a question for Jack or for Tracy? Please, stand up.
Tracy, my question for you, as a child dealing with this type of situation, what was the best thing that you did during the intervention?
I sound like a broken record, but prayer, honestly, is the only thing that got me through every day. It was incredibly emotional. We were on the phone all day, calling the different places or talking to different doctors or whatever it was. And honestly, prayer was the only thing that got me through the whole thing. And it wasn't just me. It was all of our friends that were praying, too.
So you had strong Christian support from some friends.
Yes, we did.
That's so crucial. Jack, also, say a word to those who may be wondering about the place of AA and the place of Al-Anon You know that it can have a very positive place. Tell them a word about that.
Okay. Alcoholics Anonymous and Al-Anon are organizations that help the alcoholic and help the family of the alcoholic. They're pretty specific into each of their design.
Mm-hmm. If you go there, is it true that the people there are more like you than you think they are? In other words, they're not different. They're just like we are.
Well, the first thing I found out when I went to AA was that this is a place where I fit.
Where I fit.
And
That's right.
It's not necessary that I fit every place else, but I fit there. And they were people like me, and they had stories like mine. And I hear more God there in some respects than I do in other parts of my daily life.
Someone else have a question? Yes, please.
Tracy, what was the greatest single help to you to help you to move forward with the intervention?
We went to an intervention seminar, and I don't know a lot about everywhere, but where we were, they had them on a timely basis where it wasn't, once a year or something like that. And we were able to go to an intervention seminar, get some information, and then get a professional to help us. And that probably was the single most helpful thing that we did.
Another question.
You mentioned that you were a churchgoer. Would you feel that perhaps churches need to be more aware of, problems among their membership, perhaps take a greater role?
Yes, I do, and I think that there's something that they need to be aware of, and that is that the alcoholic is really not a bad person. The alcoholic cannot exercise control over drinking once he's had one drink. When he becomes drunk, he does bad things. When he's not drinking, he's a great fellow. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So he's not a bad person. He thinks that he's a bad person. And until he calls on the strength of God, he's sort of without hope. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. When I said that I turned my will and my life over to the care of God, my will is my thinking.
Yes.
And my life is my actions.
Very good, very good. Tracy, I want to ask you a question. God's Word is very, very special to you, very precious to you, His promises. How do you apply His promises when you face a family problem like you had to face? How do you do that? Because I know you went through tears. I know you went through some periods of, Lord, what would you have me to do, and when would you have me to do it? How did the Word of God help you?
Well, I believe that He has promised to take care of us, and in that, I believe that that's what was there to help me. I believed also, though, that when I looked specifically at Jesus, that as far as the Word speaking to me and what He went through, quite frankly, I thought maybe I wasn't going through a whole lot, but it did help because I felt that God would be faithful, and He was faithful.
Did you go through all of that believing, I can't change anyone but me?
I knew He had to do it.
Jack, are you seeing people make the same steps and the same mistakes that you made?
Yes. The alcoholic, or at least in my instance, uses alcohol for a purpose, and it works for a while. Mm-hmm. And then it doesn't work, and then you don't know what to do. Mm-hmm. And so you give up hope. I mean, the intervention that occurred, I went because of my family. Mm-hmm. I stayed there because I wanted to do something for me. And it was when I changed why I was, well, let me put it another way. When I became willing to allow God to do for me what I was not able to do for myself, then I began to get better.
Would you identify with a mother who called our ministry and asked us to pray that her son would hit the bottom so that he would be ready to make changes? Would you identify with that at all?
Oh, yes. Oh, yeah. And bottoms are different. You know, for one person it may be that he's got to sleep under the bridge. And for me, I didn't get quite that far. For young people, it may be that the fact that they have intelligence, greater intelligence than what I had, to know that there is a predictable pattern of alcoholism, that there are certain signs of becoming an alcoholic, and that there is no need to go all the way down. And there may be some people out there that are just thinking, well, you know, I might be an alcoholic. The odds are they are.
We could talk about this a long time, but I want to thank you, Jack, and thank you, Tracy, for talking to us today about the journey that you went on in life and where God, through prayer, through the help of Christian friends, through keeping the promises that He's made, intervened in your life. And you responded to that, and now you're on that higher road. Not out of the woods, because none of us are out of the woods. We are everyday strugglers. Thank you for sharing your story. I just want to add, as we move toward the end of our program today, that I did not know my father, who also abused alcohol for most of his life. I didn't know what the pain was, what the dynamics were in his life, because he didn't talk to me about it. He wanted to provide for his family, and he did keep his job, but he wanted also not to share with us some of the pain that he had experienced as a young man. But it was only a short time ago that he was dying from lung cancer, and I was able to be with him a number of days during that extended period of his last time on earth. And I asked him one day, I said, Dad, would you tell me, at this late date, but would you tell me some of the dynamics that went into your choice to use alcohol on a daily basis to escape some of your pain? And he said, well, I must tell you that it was a choice I made, and I kept making the wrong choice, and I have to take responsibility for that. But maybe there's one thing I will tell you. He said, you know, I love my mother, and I would have done anything to help her. But she told me from my earliest years that she wished I had been a girl, that she didn't want a boy. And all during those early years, she made it clear to me that she was not pleased with me being a son, and that I could not earn her approval. And he said that was very painful to me. I didn't know that he had started drinking as early as 15, and that the problem alcohol moved very quickly to about the middle of his 16th year. He had won a scholarship to college, and his mother said, you can't take it. And that disappointed him. She would not provide the laundry money. Now, this is not an attempt to make her look bad. There have to be other things in her life. There have to be other tensions and other reasons. But he did say to me that our children need the blessing from their parents. They do not need the negative and critical spirit, because oftentimes it breeds in that child an insecurity, and sometimes they'll try to fill that with something like I did, which was alcohol. Well, that helped me a bit, just to see another point of view, another piece of the puzzle. I love that man. And we're doing the program today because we're closer to this problem than we even want to admit. We've lived it. Jack and Tracy have lived it. Some who are in our studio audience have lived it. I've lived it. You're probably living it now with a friend, perhaps someone in your immediate family or extended family. If you're someone who's trying to make it on your own, deal with this problem by yourself, let me tell you something. You are not self-sufficient. I want to encourage you to begin your journey by saying, God, I need you in my life. I need to depend upon you, because God is waiting there with open arms for you. He has never stopped loving you. He knows your name. He always wants you to come to Him and say, help me. I like Psalm 40, verse 2. He lifted me up out of the slimy pit, out of the mud and the mire. He set my feet on a rock, and He gave me a firm place to stand. That's exactly what God will do for you if you will allow Him into your life. That's the first step toward becoming equipped to deal with the problems that affect our family. So let me encourage you. Write for these free materials. Feel free to call that 800 number right now to get this booklet, Help me, alcohol controls my family. Now, these resources and this broadcast are made possible by members of the Churches of Christ because we're so grateful that Jesus is changing our lives, and we want you to know that He'll change your life too. We each have our own struggles, but we take great heart that God is there to help us. He's there to help you too. So write us or call us today. Let us know how we can help you. I'm Randy Beckton, and I'm looking forward to hearing from you and to seeing you next time on Hope for Life's Journey, brought to you by the Herald of Truth Ministries. May God richly bless you and your family. Thank you. Thank you, dear.